It is 7:35, and I'm going to start the meeting. Okay, Andrea. So we have Dan on, we have Mario, we have Jerry Lee there. Oh, and we have Stephen is out, right? He's not here today. No, Stephen. Okay. And Phil, you're not on yet. We don't see you. So I'll just keep that open. So just a few words, quick. Give him a few minutes here. A few words. We all know about the election results, and Donna DeBose will be stepping in to Dan's seat. And Dan, going to miss you very much. You've just been so wonderful to have on this council. And I'm sure that Donna will do justice. She'll be great, but I'll miss you personally very much. Just wanted to tell you that. And to thank everybody else for running. Stephen isn't here and Phil isn't on. So, but to thank them as well for running again. I wanted to also mention that we are on a tight schedule for the budget. We have learned we've been reminded that we have to have a next year fiscal budget passed 21 days before, we start operating in a new fiscal year. So that doesn't leave us time to adopt a budget at the town council meeting in June. Just wanted you to all know that. And I think he might be on. Do you want to check that, Andrea? Phil might be on. I think he's muted. You're muted too, Andrea.
Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Can.
Yes, we can.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you, Phil. Phil, I just called the meeting to order and thanked Dan for his service on the council, that he'll be missed, and thanked you and Stephen as well for stepping up and running again, and also to be looking forward to Donna DeBose serving in place of Dan. Okay, you're now in attendance, so you get the check mark, and we can. Oh, I was just saying that the budget, we're on a tight schedule for the budget. We have to have an adopted budget before the FY22 fiscal year begins, 21 days before we start, because it takes 21 days for the ordinance to be effective. So we can't wait till the June town council meeting to adopt a budget. Okay, so I'm gonna go on now to approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? Okay.
Jackie, did we want to remove Stephen's update?
Sure. Let's see, where is that? Town hall? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So with that change, are you all in agreement with the draft agenda? Yes? Let's see. Jerry, I can see you. Jerry Lee, yes?
Yes, I'm in agreement.
Yes.
And Dan and Mario, I hear you. Dan, yes? Okay. And Phil, I can't hear you, but are you? Okay, great. Okay, so that is, the draft agenda is approved with the change of taking, striking the town hall update under town updates. So thank you. Okay. Let's see, approval of minutes. I just want to check, it's 7:40 on the time. I don't have my watch on, so 7:40. Approval of minutes. Anybody have any changes to the minutes? Okay. Let's just go. Phil? Change? Are you agreement?
No, I'm okay.
You agree.
Okay.
Dan?
Good.
Okay. Mario? You agree with the minutes?
Yep, he did
Is
a
that a
thumbs
yes?
up.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't get on
Oh,
mute. Yes,
oh.
yes, yes. I was trying to give it the
Yeah,
old.
I'm sorry, I didn't. Thumbs up will be good, but I just didn't see it.
No,
Sorry. And
you're
Jer-
good. I didn't unmute. My bad.
okay, Jerry Lee.
Yes,
Jerry Lee? Okay, great. All right, so minutes are approved as is. Thank you, everybody. Presentation by residents. Are there any presentations by residents?
Yes, unless you would prefer me to wait until the budget discussion. It's your choice. I have only about 2 minutes of comments.
Well, are they the same ones that you mailed in to the
No,
council?
no.
Okay, then why don't you hold it until we get to the discussion, to the budget introduction, and see if, as we go through it, if any of your questions might be answered. Okay?
It's in aggregate, so it's not going to deal with details of the budget. So my comment will have nothing to do with the various line items. Because I
Okay,
think what I gave to the council is self-explanatory. I'm Ken Schwartz, by the way, for those of you who don't know me. So if you
thank
want,
you.
I
Right.
can probably go through it in 1 minute right now if you wish, but that's your
Well,
choice.
Ken, if it's a statement and it's not to specific detail, then I would welcome that, sure. But if you have some details to specific things, items in the budget or process, I'd rather that we wait. So I
It's-
don't know what you want to say, so,
Yeah, so I'll say it now. It's in aggregate.
okay.
I've said what I think I need to say on details previously in my written comments, so I'll let that stand.
And your address, please.
10919 Claremont Avenue. I would just point
Okay,
out,
thank you.
my major point is multi-year misestimates on the part of regarding the budget. And I've looked at the audits for the last 4 years, which is on the town website. I would just say that the variance to 2017 to 2020, 2017, it was off by 158,000. That is, it was pessimistic to the degree of 158,000. 2018, it grew, it was 192,000 pessimistic. 2019, 349,000 pessimistic. 2020, 400,000 pessimistic. Now, I would say past is prologue, and what you've seen in the recent past is going to continue in 2021 and 2022. And I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. And we have had many discussions, exchanges, you and I, about the numbers, as well as with Andrea. So we'll get to that again if we need to go through that again to explain why. But okay, sounds like the only presentation by residents. So shall we go into the action items then? And the time is 7:44. Andrea, do you want to take a technical correction to the FY21 mid-year?
Sure, just grab my stuff. Okay, so this item would be to make a technical correction to the FY21 mid-year budget. And this on the monthly reports that you look at each month and the manager reports, there was an error that inadvertently left off what was budgeted for 32.4 and 32.6 during the initial FY21 budget process. So it's two line items that had budgeted funds that were inadvertently left off the monthly reports. And because of the process that I used to develop the budget, in this case, the FY21 mid-year budget, these were also left off of the mid-year budget. So this is just a technical correction to correct for this. And so the request would be for a motion to accept the technical correction for the FY21 mid-year.
Thank you, Andrea. Any discussion? Anybody want to pose the motion? Okay. Okay, no
So,
discussion,
just-
you want to,
So, I wanted to know, does this affect any of the other numbers? I mean, in other words, the total capital account line, are they affected?
No, basically what this, how this impacts the capital is that we have more money than we thought we did. And that's how we discovered it. Not to get into the nitty gritty of the budget, but when we, after the mid-year was adopted and we went to make the transfer, we had $10,000 more than we thought we did and figured out this is what occurred. So we have more money than we realized that we did. So it's at least an error in a good direction.
That's good, Andrea. Just a quick question. Was the money there because just work wasn't done or just because people had just, or do we know, like for Arboretum work? I'm just curious. Was it work that was scheduled and didn't happen because of COVID or whatever reasons, or just,
Yeah. For this technical correction, this is basically an Excel error.
okay,
This is
Okay.
when the monthly reports, so in the manager's report, there's a monthly report behind that that gives the monthly financials for the town.
Okay.
I use those as the basis for the capital budget when developing the capital budget. And because it was inadvertently left off the monthly report, it was inadvertently left off what I started with. You know, good
No
learning
problem.
opportunity for
Yeah.
me too. I should have
No.
double checked it against the budget that we
No.
passed. I should have seen.
It happened. It's all good. That's fine.
So we have 10,000 more than we thought we did. So
Yeah, that's good. You can make it out to me.
Yeah, right.
okay, is there anybody want to raise a question? The motion.
This is Jerry Lee. First of all, thank you, Andrea, for catching this because it benefits the Arboretum Committee, but I will make a motion to pass the resolution as presented.
And I'll second
Is
that.
there- Okay, thank you. Now, if I hear all in favor, let me just hear a big cheer. But if there's anybody, I will ask if there's any nays. So all in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. And is there anyone saying no? Or abstaining? I just need to do that. For the record, I can't hear, but okay. So it's all in favor, unanimous. Motion is passed, Andrea. Thank you, everybody. Sorry, I'm ready. Okay, introduction of ordinance 2021-4 for FY22 budget. And I think there isn't too much for me to say. I'd like Andrea to really present this, but just to remind people if they didn't catch the email that I sent out around 5 o'clock this evening or 5:30, what was it? I want you to all to know that the constant yield developed by the state was actually higher than our local tax rate. Our local tax rate is 2.2045. The state constant yield to tax to get to the same revenue base was at 0.2076. Andrea and I discussed this. We looked at some modeling. We decided to keep our local tax rate at the current level because the state future property assessments are also lower. And they're lower than even the assessments of the 2021 year, if you can follow that. So we basically just stayed with what that assessment was that they gave us. You know, we're going to be entering the first of a 3-year cycle, right, Andrea? Not knowing whether that'll be going up or down actually, but they have it down, this first assessment, and which with a 0.2045 local tax rate, our revenue will also be down. And that is without, although we did the modeling, and in previous years, we've done even some additional conservative reductions to that, we chose to go with what the state assessment was and our local tax rate, which is why we're at what, 268 or something like that. I mean, 568, can't remember, but anyway, we followed the state practice, and that's where we are on that. Why don't you go ahead, Andrea, and then, we can address questions as we go along. Okay.
Sure. Sounds good. Okay, so FY22 budget. I'm just trying to think about where to jump in here. Big picture. So the total revenues are budgeted at 1.45 million, including carryover. Operations are at 1.39 million. There's a $58,000 transfer to capital, and capital is proposed at 1.39 million. So there's your big picture. Although not part of the budgeting process, so not something that you formally vote on, our reserves have a balance of 332,000, and that includes an operating reserve of 175,000. So just important kind of context to keep in mind throughout these discussions. I think what I'll do is I will continue with revenues from where Mayor Kaki left off. And as we get to each of the major budget areas, I'll stop and take any questions that you have, and then we'll keep going through. And then at the end of each revenue, operations, and capital, also see if there's anything else to address before moving on. So for revenues, looking at other taxes and fees, I think the other, big item of interest would be income taxes, estimated at 450,000. Important to keep in mind that the Maryland tax deadline is in July, so it does make things a little unpredictable as far as both FY21 income tax revenues and FY22 income tax revenues. And then we don't know the impact that COVID is going to have on it. So keeping all that in mind with how that was developed. Anything else that's in taxes and fees is fairly minor, but does anybody have any questions on taxes and fees before we move on?
May I ask a question?
Kaki, how do you want to
Before we start, yeah, I want to give Ken, it's Ken Schwartz. I want to give opportunity first for the council members to process and to ask the questions. Once I hear nothing, I will open it to you or to the floor, Ken. So please
That's
be
fine.
patient. Let's just see where we go.
That's fine.
Okay. Council members, do you have anything to ask?
This is Phil.
Go ahead.
I noticed that the predicting less revenue, taxes, and fees in the intergovernmental receipts than we have in FY20. Is there a reason for that? Because this kind of addresses, I know Ken is going to probably ask some more questions, but this addresses the issue of underestimating our revenues and overestimating our operations and coming up with a large carryover. So I'm just wondering why we wouldn't go with the number that we had, for FY20.
Are you're talking about intergovernmental receipts?
Well, but intergovernmental receipts and taxes and fees.
So with taxes and fees, I think Kaki and I just spoke to each of those. Certainly the largest taxes and fees categories there. I can go through line by line with all of them. I think for council, you've seen my internal budget notes, so you have a sense of what's happening there. But for intergovernmental receipts, I can jump ahead to that one. Highway user revenue is 3.1, and this is based on an MDOT estimate. And I know that we're already we're low right now compared to what the estimate was for this year. And we've been told to anticipate that we may not be receiving that full revenue, that could be lower than expected. And then 3.2 is the revenue sharing tax duplication piece, which we'll talk about. And then Montgomery cable are the two pieces there. So typically the municipal cable decreases each year. I think COVID is kind of a curveball there. It could go either way. People have been home more often. Maybe there's more cable revenue, or maybe they're home more often and they're, I don't know, embracing Roku and Hulu and whatever else. So maybe there's less cable revenue. It's challenging. So I decreased that one by 20% just as a way to kind of build in some safeguards there. For the tax duplication, if the county council adopts the county executive's recommended budget, then our tax duplication would increase. If they do not, then we would continue to get the same payment that we've been getting. So I used the lower number, not the higher number, since it has not been voted on. And in general, unless money's in hand, I don't like to budget high for something like this that's been talked about for, I don't know, 10 years at least.
Okay.
Kaki, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I just wanted to remind council, and not everybody was involved when the FY20 budget or 21 budget was being developed, and that, I guess I really should speak to the FY20 end of year actual that you raised, Phil, for local income tax. We had about 500,000 end of year actual for FY20. Our initial projection for that was adopted was 451. So we're almost, equivalent to that now. And that, as Andrea explained, the state of Maryland has extended, the tax filing for state income taxes into July. So we don't really know how much we're going to get for FY21, nor do we know how much we're really going to get for FY22. I just wanted to reiterate that for everybody. So, if we don't get everything that we had asked for, and if we're even on track with FY20, we aren't, I don't think it's that egregious or that overly conservative just to hold it 50,000 less. We just don't know what's going to happen. So that's all I wanted to add. Anybody else have anything to say? The council members first, based on Andrea's comments.
Yeah, thank you, Kaki, for explaining that. On the local income tax, I'm wondering, Andrea, does the town receive that in one lump sum every year, or are we paid on some sort of quarterly basis for the local income tax?
It's on a cycle, and I'd have to look up the months that maybe Kaki remember off the top of your head, but there are months that tend to be larger than other months, certainly. But I can have that for the adoption and let you know kind of what that cycle is. Unless you remember.
I guess the reason I was wondering is if you look at our current actuals as of the end of February, we were already at what our adopted budget was. So I was curious if that represented what percent you thought that might represent for this year in 21.
I think it's
we're sort of. Go ahead,
ahead.
Andrea. Okay, you're right, Jerry Lee. We're sort of on track with where not only hitting the mark for the estimated FY21, but we're also on track with where we were for FY20, roughly. I think we're a little bit higher, but we're close. And again, it just comes down to, yes, we might be higher at the end of this year. We don't know how much. We may not hit, we may not go up to the 504 that was in FY20. Okay, so that's why we've kept it down. We're not going back to readjust the mid-year. So this is about the FY22, just to kind of reiterate that, please.
Yeah, I understand that. I was just trying to compare our proposed budget to our current income in that regard. Okay, well, that helps me to understand how we receive that over time.
I think as
right.
that we get emails from the state with our when we know what the payment's going to be. We get an email from the state with some, I would call it minor analysis. And a lot of those emails tend to, over the last, I'd say year and a half, 2 years, have been, we don't know what's going to happen from this, I don't know the official name, Khaki, do you remember, Tax Act? We don't know
The Jobs Act.
Yeah, the Jobs Act, how that's going to
Oh,
impact
and that, yeah.
taxes. We don't know how that's going to change what the local governments are receiving. And then when COVID hit, it was seeing some weird things here on what you all are receiving. We're not sure how this is going to impact you. So there's a lot of uncertainty, and the emails we get from the state sort of point to that uncertainty, that I think they're kind of trying to prepare the local governments that it's a little unexpected right now. The environment's a little unexpected. Okay, any other questions, or Khaki, how did you want to handle this for moving
If
on?
there is no more questions, okay, thanks, Andrea. If there's no more questions from council, I can ask Ken to go ahead and raise your question or your issue.
Thank you. First, I wanted to, in terms of the documents you submitted, there were graphs. And there was a graph number 5, Garrett Park income revenue by fiscal year. And I was unclear what the 2022 bar stood for. I see that there's a number of 549 on the bar. Is that suggesting that that is somebody's estimate of what our income, what the, in effect, the 2.3 other local taxes, and I'm sorry, the local income taxes will be? Or is that, what's the?
No, we don't get any, yeah, only the property assessments.
No, I'm not talking.
Real property assessments are,
I'm talking,
I know, wait, are for the future, I know, for the future are what is given to us by the state. What you're looking at on income revenue, which is chart number 5, the blue bars represent the forecasted numbers. They're forecasted.
By whom?
So it's just a forecast.
By whom? It's forecast
by the model I use.
Well,
it's the model I use in Excel. So it's a smoothing. It's go ahead.
So
go ahead.
But it has the number 549 on it for 2022 income. Yes,
that's right. I did a forecast based on previous years using some kind of a, exponential trend that looks at, different periods of the time series and continues to smooth them over and over to
the current
eliminate.
Budget is 450. So it's 100 and it's 100 million lower than that forecasted revenue as shown in that bar chart.
Right. Right. It's just to give us an idea. We're still in we're still within that, we were low on the 2021. You can see 2020 was 505, right? So again, this is just, I know you have a different perspective. You may have a different philosophy on how you would like to estimate future year projections. You may consider that we are too conservative, and you use the word pessimistic. Respectfully, I don't agree with you. And so, this is 450 because we don't know what the impact of the delayed state tax filing will have. We may not see all the local income tax revenue returned to us in FY21 or FY22. It's gonna, we do not know. So that's why we went with 450.
So if I understand it,
we still went higher. We still went higher than FY21, because FY21 we were low, again, for the same reasons. But, acknowledging that, we might have been off on, the 521, I don't know. This was why we went with this.
Okay, you went 100,000, essentially 100,000 lower than this projection on the bar chart. And you went back to your.
We never go with exactly, we never use exactly that point estimate. I would never use that point estimate.
But you're
It gives
going-
you a relative basis, but I wouldn't go with that point estimate of 549.
But just to clarify, I just said.
So maybe you're,
You're.
what you might be
basically pegging
suggesting.
it you're basically pegging it at the 2018 level.
We're pegging it really at the FY20 level.
Well, the
FY20, we estimated
446.
451. FY21, we estimated at 451 in FY20. That was our initial adopted budget for FY20. And it went up by 50,000. I understand that. It went up by that much. We don't know what the impact is.
Let me just say, on revenue, what's the harm at coming to the midpoint of in terms of, why is it desirable to be very, very conservative on item A, item B, and item C? If you go, here's my point. If the budget is too pessimistic, and I agree that it's good, it's better to be pessimistic than it is to be optimistic. But if you're too pessimistic, then, for example, you're ready to do something with town hall, and then you might not have the funds available because your projections are so low. So if you look at the budget and it's all very conservative and a bit on the pessimistic side, then you won't have funds for some of the things you might like to do, especially in capital, for example, town hall. And it may force you to borrow funds when you may not need to borrow funds, because at the end of the year, you might have better results, as has been shown for the last 4 years, better results at the end of the year than had been projected. And some of those years were before you were here, Khaki, but not 2020.
Yeah, I know that. And well, we knew what we were dealing with as we entered FY20. And, I do understand what you're saying, and I hear you. However, the process we follow is we also see what happens at mid-year. And if it looks like, we're going to beat that mark, perhaps we'll raise it. Perhaps we'll have a better idea. But there's nothing wrong with the first few months of the fiscal year being conservative. And I won't use the word pessimistic.
Okay.
Because we have things that are happening that are out of our control.
Well, and as you know, on 2021, you're already over your income tax estimate.
We are.
So
And
that's in March.
I know, Andrea.
You're assuming no more revenue for April, May, June, 3 months.
Well, I don't know. We are over. But as Andrea said, there is a schedule. And Jerry Lee, you asked the question if we knew it. I do believe we have received the bulk of our revenue now. We may get a little bit more. So yeah, you're going to probably see a bump up
Well, I've said what I need to say.
by the end of the fiscal year. Mhm. Okay,
And-
thank you.
and-
Did somebody
and-
else, Mario?
Yeah, I just want to say, Ken, thank you, and your point is duly noted, and without a question, it makes sense. I just have a question. Andy, did you work with Khaki on this? Are you comfortable? I mean, you as a career professional in this space, are you comfortable with kind of the numbers, the way Khaki's working? Not just Khaki, but the way that the town is working. I don't want to put on a spot, but the way the town is working through the numbers, because
Yes.
I rely on you. You're the professional. We pay you to advise. So if you're in line with that, then I get it. I support the direction we're going. I agree with Khaki. Nothing is finalized now. We can always go back. Ken, I agree with you. Although if we start talking about capital improvements like like town hall, it's going to be a lot more than whatever delta is going to be between what Kaki put together and what you were mentioning. But I don't disagree or discredit anything you're saying at all. But I appreciate, Andrea, you saying what you're saying, which is you're in line with the thought process. You're the professional in the room in this space. So I say we proceed.
I would be significantly more concerned if we came up short on revenue than having more revenue than we had planned for. I have worked in a local government environment during a recession where local government revenue was not what was anticipated, and it's very uncomfortable. You end up with staff on different benefit structures. You end up with staff on furloughs that are unpaid, essentially pay cuts. It's not great for morale. There's a lot more challenges if you wind up with shortages on revenue than if you have additional revenue. You may be delayed in having access to that until the mid-year. But even then, we could address that sooner than we normally do if we needed to. We would do it as an earlier mid-year budget adjustment.
Right.
So
No, I agree. All right.
yeah, it can be dealt with administratively.
No,
True.
Thank you.
True. And we have done that before. We did that in, I think 2018, when I found a large error of, I think it was like 60,000 or something. And so we modified that in September. You weren't on board yet, but
Yeah.
when I became mayor, we found that, and the council made a revision to the budget. Okay. I'm sorry, you want to continue now?
Sure. Okay, so moving on then to municipal refuse.
Are we still on the taxes revenue? No, I just had a question on.
No, we
chart-
just moved off.
well,
We just moved off. Do you have a quick question?
Yes, on chart 3B. First of all, LPTR is what, local property tax revenue?
Right. Local property tax rate.
Tax rate, okay. And the CYTR is constant yield tax rate?
Yep. Mhm.
Okay. And this shows that the real property value is declining in Garrett Park. Is that correct?
Yes.
As reported by the Office of the Secretary.
Yes. And you may have missed my introduction, but that's what I stated in the beginning.
No,
And so the constant yield provided by the state has gone higher in order to arrive at the same revenue received in 2021.
right. I just wanted the
That's what the
acronym.
constant yield is.
I just wanted the acronym translated. And I guess I have one question on chart 5. I've followed all the arguments why we need to be flexible in one thing and another. I take it that the range shown is intended to take account of those unknowns and variables. And yet the budget has pegged the income at 10% below the low end of that range. And I think I'm still unclear on why that was chosen, why a 10% below the low end of the range is where you ended up on the proposed budget.
Okay, you have to understand that an exponential trend model, even though it's got a lot of smoothing going on, it doesn't know that we are going to be encountering an extended tax filing. So it's just continuing. And, I guess I didn't even have to provide this chart because we obviously we're going to stay below that.
No, the charts are very helpful. And I understand the use of the need for a range because you can't project. But having established the range and having established the low end at about 500,000, you've pegged the income at 450.
I'm sorry. You have to understand the statistical model and the starting points, because that range is still not using what we already know may be a big impact. Doesn't know that. And I can't remember if it's standard deviation or if it is standard error or if it's a confidence interval. Sorry, I'd have to go back and look at my Excel spreadsheet. But either way, any of those, it doesn't know what we know. And we don't have numbers to fit into that model for that reason. So we're kind of restating our justification here. Can we move on? Can we move on? Unless council wants to stay on this topic?
Well, this is Jerry Lee. I just want to clarify because I know you're covering the statistical reasons for the lack of confidence, but I do think that Andrea, I can't remember if she said it tonight or if it was just in her notes to us, that with the uncertainty of the COVID environment, it makes sense to me that both real property and income tax receipt expectations might underperform, particularly this year. And that was our understanding last year as well. So I just think it's important that we go on record noting that that is another reason for our lack of confidence in projecting high for this year in particular. Next year, we might look at it a little differently, for example.
Right, for projecting low. Thank you, Jerry Lee. You're right. And I'm remiss in not saying that because of COVID, we don't know what the unemployment rates may be. There's an expectation across the state that they may be lower, of course. We don't know how it affects the town. But this is the caveats we work with. And so we're on the conservative end.
But the stock market has
Thank you.
increased in 21. And that we do know. And that would yield higher income.
You know, that's great. Great, Ken. And I've been following the stock market every single day. And the big gainers are people with a lot of money. Okay. I'm not going to say any more.
Maybe we should
I
buy
follow that every
Bitcoin.
single day. I know. Yeah. Or some kind of cyber currency, right? Okay. Is there any other questions? All right, let's move on. I'm sorry, Andrea. Let's move on where you want to go next.
How about line 4.0, municipal refuse? So I want to bring this up to state that I've included as the budget estimate. This is based off what this rate has been for the last many years. But there will be an RFP that will be coming out. So this may change. So this is something that we may need to address in the next budget adjustment, in the FY22 budget adjustment, if this changes after we do a competitive procurement. Just wanted to draw that to your attention. Under 5.0.
Sorry, Andrea, I have a question about that.
Yep.
So how does that work? The town sets up its contract and then we set our refuse collection fee per household based on the cost of the contract when we update it. Is that why that number would raise as a revenue source?
Yeah, and having not been through this process, because that contract was last done in like 15 years ago, maybe. But I know that the what we pay the hauler is what the county pays us. It's even sum game. So it corresponds with operating line 14.2, and they net zero.
Okay, thank you for explaining how that
Right.
works. I appreciate it.
So for the miscellaneous receipts, investment earnings are projected to be low. Again, not sure what will be going on. CDs were our main investment in FY19 when that looked positive in an FY20. We weren't able to do that because we needed to have cash on hand during SRTS. So we weren't investing in CDs. That's why the current fiscal year is low. And I'm not I know last year we, through discussion with council, decided to decrease this. And so I just wanted to go low again for FY22. For rents and concessions, so for town hall rents, this one's very tricky, obviously, to understand when we'll open up a town hall again, if there will be a lot of demand for rentals, if we'll have to do cleaning. It sounds like probably not disinfecting cleaning anyway, but there's a lot of variables there. So this could be decreased, and council, you may want to decrease this. I would not recommend going higher than this, however. For Penn Place rents, this is the full rent for Black Market, and this is the post office with half the year at their current lease, and then when the new lease will kick in January of 2022, this is what's currently under negotiation, would be the other half of that revenue for that line item. 5.2.3, that increases annually. That's a regular increase. And then 5.4, this is very small, but that's just a farmer's market that we know that we're going to get at least that much. So I thought I would include it. Any questions for miscellaneous receipts from council?
As a technical matter, shouldn't you just show the gifts to sanitation crew frozen at the 21 level? And I realized that there would be a countervailing expenditure on the next page, but you don't really expect zero.
I think this has to do with the way that the budget ordinance that established the reserve is written. I think this is typically how we've done it for both on the revenue side and on the operating side for the gifts.
Right. Once we've realized what kind of revenue we might get, which is around mid-year. Sorry. Then we make the appropriate transfer.
I think the ordinance allows for that to happen outside of a mid-year, for example.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I didn't mean it like needing that action. Yeah. Sorry, I thought I had that one done.
What was 5.4? I noticed it's 32,000 this year is actual.
Right. So that is COVID. That's COVID reimbursements. Yeah.
And some of those COVID reimbursements cover expenditures from the FY20 and some in FY21.
And then we have some expenses that weren't reimbursed that may be reimbursed in FY22. So.
Right.
Okay, any other revenue questions from council before I move on to operations? Okay. All right, for operations expenses in the personnel category, a 2.5% base salary increase for town staff was used in here. This is the same as the last few years. Overtime was projected based on a percentage of maintenance staff salaries, and that was looking at some past actuals on that and making some projections based off that. Benefits, there are some increases that are projected. So for health insurance increase, and looking at the county's budget, we have the county's health insurance, their projected increase 7%. So that's what I included for ours. And then the other one that would be of note there is that workers' comp was based on a 13% increase to FY21, since that's what happened from FY20 to FY21. So just again, wanting to make sure that we're thinking about that and planning appropriately. Hopefully it's not that large of an increase, but yes.
Yeah, I had a question for you. I remember when we did the budget last year, we reduced some of the salary line item when we were worried about the conservative nature of potential revenues in FY21. We reduced the salaries to reduce potential bonuses for the staff.
I took out
How did
contingency.
you address that in this year's proposed budget?
Yeah, I had a contingency in there last year that allows for any sort of bonuses or raises, or if you have staff turnover and you have to hire somebody and it's a higher rate than what the previous person was making, any kind of contingencies you may run into when you have staff. I left that out of this year.
Okay, so there's not a contingency this year, though you normally do include such a contingency.
Right. I would like to have it. I think it's good practice to have. But since there was some questions on it last year and knowing that we're still in sort of an unsure operating environment, I left it out for this year as well.
Did you end up having any actual payments that would have otherwise in FY21 thus far that would have otherwise been covered by such a contingency?
No, but obviously something like bonuses can't even be considered if there's nowhere to pay it from, right? So.
Yeah, I understand that. It seems to me that our real experience over the last year has been different and more positive than what we were estimating a year ago.
Yeah.
So I would suggest to the other council members that we could perhaps add that contingency back in, because I think rather than having more money in, say, a operating contingency line item that's more generic, should show our support for our town staff by making it clear that we want to budget for town staff as a priority.
I agree with you, Yearly. I think it's the prudent thing to do for this fiscal year. I agree.
Andrea, what did we build into the annual increase for payroll?
Annual increase is the 2.5% base salary. And so that's, again, based on what previous increases have been, essentially cost of living. And last year I had included it was a $10,000 contingency as I'm looking at my calculations.
Where was that? What line item?
That would be in 10.1.
Okay, so you had it built in there.
Mhm.
So I guess what I'm proposing is that we could reduce either our carryover or the operations contingency to make room for that and be more clear of what our intent is as a council for how that money would be spent or could be spent.
Okay, let me back up a second. Let me have you all back up a second. Because I'm not arguing about the increase, but the placement. So I'm not certain that contingency would need to be built into the salaries. We've already established a healthy increase in the annual rate. Andrea, where do you put bonuses? I mean, we estimate for that as well in the 2.5, but we also may use just a single kind of checks for occasionally for bonus for merit work, quality of merit work. Do we put that in salary? Is that where it goes?
That's yeah. Right now there's nothing budgeted, but I think that would go in salaries. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right then. Okay, I'm cool. It's up to you guys. Andrea, do you have any thought on what Jerry Lee's suggesting?
No, I mean, I think it's great, and I just think it's nice to have the flexibility. Again, even if there isn't an occasion to use it, it's nice to have that flexibility. And I know it certainly in previous places where I worked, there, I was on a large team, and there's lots of different ways to kind of go about this, right? So it can be small things that recognize employees for different things, or it can be more like bonuses, right? So just even having anything in there, I think is nice because it gives flexibility as a manager of people.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and add plus 10 on the 10.1 line for right now, and we would be taking that out of the 17.1 operations contingency. So that would be a minus 10 to keep to a, for now anyway, if you want to have a balanced, keep a balanced budget going here. Net. Okay, anything else?
Can we take it out of the carryover?
So we haven't gotten to where you want to discuss that carryover. Do you want to jump ahead to that, Andrea? I mean, are you all clear about, did you all see my email from 5 o'clock or 5:30 that discusses that? Or do you want us to discuss that now? Why it's there, even to start with?
Why don't we do that?
This is a new subcategory. Okay.
Sure, go ahead. That would be helpful.
So on
Where do you
the,
want to start?
sure, so on the contingency, this now has two subcategories. One is the operations contingency. So this, for all intents and purposes, is sort of the contingency that we could use within the operations budget. And then there's the estimated out year carryover. And this contingency, you'll notice, is the same as the estimated carryover on the revenue page. And this is intentional in that it is trying to protect the carryover for FY23. So in the event that, well, I should back up. In the event that we don't have the carryover that we're estimating for FY22, that this is sort of built-in assurance. So we would not be then spending that 70,000 of estimated carryover. Kaki, do you want to jump in? I feel like I didn't say that as clear as I maybe could have.
No, I think that's pretty good. So if, you know, and this has been an issue that Ken has raised. If we were to get 100% of our revenue as we have formulated here for FY22, and as you know, we always do a net zero budget. And so if we get 100% on revenue, and if we spend everything down on the operation side, which is the net zero, right? We have no money for carryover into FY23. So to protect that we have something, we've created this subcategory of 70,000. Now, if we get more, which realistically, we will get some carryover at the end of FY22, then we just continue, we make that adjustment. We keep the 70 there anyway. The did I say that right? Maybe so FY21, we're thinking, you know, we're taking the 70,000 as revenue from what we think could be, it's very low ball, but could be carryover from FY21 into FY22. The 70 is on the revenue line of carryover. We don't know, could be 350,000, could be 100, could be 400, right? We don't know. But we know we're probably going to have some carryover. But let's say we spend everything in FY21. Then we'll have nothing to carry over into 23. And so that's what that 70,000 is for on the operations line. Does that help? It's like a domino effect. You have to keep moving with this. You have to, you know, don't think of it as static. If we have nothing at the end of FY21, no, sorry, if we have nothing at the end of FY22, we'll at least have 70,000 to use for FY23. Am I ahead? Maybe I'm ahead by a year. Sorry.
But just talking about that, what's the problem if we have like $1 of carryover? I mean, it sounds like we're basically making, you know, this contingency, but I'm just thinking that as Ken has kind of brought up, you know, it's a little bit more padding, and maybe it's something that we should be spending on something, or as I had just suggested earlier, that we reduce that to $60,000 to allocate it for bonuses and et cetera in the payroll line.
Mhm.
Well, and I was wondering, I had a similar thought, which was why not allocate potential excess to specific capital projects that we have already stated that we wanted to prioritize, for example, to the town hall renovation capital line item that we've been adding to. It seems odd to me that we would create a line item for carryover rather than starting to build more robustly for a priority we've already stated.
So you have to back up and again realize the prior year carryover is what's left at the end of fiscal year. We already know that at the end of FY20, the audit just finished up, had us at 400,000, and we kind of have explained why there was that kind of surplus. So that 400,000 in the FY21 column has been distributed across the operations budget. We've used that, right? And so if at the end of FY21 we spend everything that we projected based on the full targeted amount of revenue without any other new revenue, then we don't have anything to carry over into FY22. That 70,000 at the top would be gone. We wouldn't even have that. Now, I mean, I think to Phil's point, you know, we've got 70,000 down in the operations as a protected measure. And that's sort of a safeguard because, you know, it could happen again. If we have no money at the end of FY22, we at least still have that 70,000 to pull forward to FY23. Now, if you like, I mean, we could reduce the protected carryover in the FY22 operating budget to 60. I would propose, though, that we would then have to reduce the carryover at the top for 60, because it's sort of covering that, but then it also has a dual purpose of bringing forward into the next out year if we have nothing else. You know, it's a dual purpose. It covers us for the initial prior year carryover estimate in this fiscal year of 22. And it also provides us that assurance into FY23 if we have nothing at the end of 22. Understand that? So if we reduce the protected carryover 60 from 70, we would want to reduce the prior year carryover on the revenue side of 1.0 also to 60, because we're covering that. In case we don't get anything from FY21, which I think we all know is pretty unrealistic, we'll get money, but it's the way to make it clean.
Okay.
And I took that
I appreciate you
Ken's
taking
point.
the time. Sorry, Kathy. I appreciate you taking the time
Yeah,
to,
that's okay.
because I am now better understanding what you're proposing. Essentially what you're saying is that if we don't include an estimate for carryover, we will have to reduce our proposed, either increase our projected revenue or reduce our projected spending proportionally. Because by building in that, that proposed carryover, it gives us more spending money, so to speak, in 22, even though we still have the conservative revenue projections. Is that another way to say what you just
Sure.
said?
I think you got it. I do. I think you got it. Mm-hmm.
But I still,
I mean, yes, it's
I would still
likely.
propose,
Uh-huh.
sorry, I would still propose, going back to the original beginning of this conversation, for coming up with the funding for the staff bonuses and other contingencies. I would still take that from the operating contingency rather than from this proposed carryover. I'm still absorbing the meaning of this carryover. I am a little curious, since we've never, I assume we've never done this before. The town has never done this before.
No.
Carryover. Have
No.
you, the town
No.
attorney, sure that there's no conflict with our budgeting legally?
No.
Legal requirements?
No. There's no. It's not illegal. There's no yeah. No.
Be fine.
Okay, so I appreciate you explaining that. In terms of my proposal for funding the contingency for the staffing, I would propose to take that out of the operating contingency.
Okay, and I'd like to play devil's advocate, and just so all council members hear this. The likelihood of getting more carryover than just 70,000 from FY21 is very high. So if you want to preserve now the 50,000 contingency, operations contingency, and take the 10,000 from the estimated carryover on line 17.2, reduce that to 60, reduce your revenue prior year carryover to 60, I think you'll be fine. Because I do think you're going to have carryover.
Yeah,
and when we get to,
I guess the reason I'm proposing it the way I am is, to me, in principle, you're saying rather than having a generic contingency, we want to, as a council, make a specific intentional priority for rewarding good performance with our staff. That's what I'm proposing.
I think the debate right now is where you take the money from to keep the balanced budget, right? So I defer to Andrea, what your preference would be, and of course, what other council members would like.
This is Phil. What I was going to say is I'm hesitant to touch the operations contingency because it's something that may have to be looked at. I mean, sometimes we make mistakes, and so it's nice to be able to have it to draw on. I don't know if we can simply move money because it's in the 17.0 bucket, and you can simply just recharge it by making the 40. Say we drop it to 40, we would make the 40 would go back to 50, and you would drop the 70 to 60 type thing if one needed to take money from it, if you know what I mean. If
I do, and that I don't. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was trying to figure that out, because if that's the case, then it doesn't really matter to me where the money comes from. But if the operation contingency is basically fixed, once at 40 and you can't move the money from the estimated out year carryover, then I would say we'd be better off taking it from the out year carryover.
That's
what I
the
mean?
way I see that. And Andrea, what do you think? I mean, as long as we continue to hold 70,000 up in the, we want the two to match. Okay, you want them to match for now until we get to mid-year. And at mid-year, we'll have a better assessment of what our real carryover is from FY21. So that 70,000 on the revenue line will probably, bump up extraordinarily. And we can leave the 70,000 in as, again, explaining that if we were to then, as we readjust the mid-year to a balanced budget again, and we spend everything, we don't get any more revenue, then we still have 70,000 to count on to put into FY23. I don't know if I'm just repeating and it's not helping, but that's the point you're making, Phil, is why, Andrea, what do you think? I mean, that's why I would say reduce down your estimated carryover on the operation line, but you have to reduce your revenue line too, as a net zero. But it does give Andrea more flexibility for the operations contingency, the use of that. Hence, taking it out of the carryover, the protected carryover, to me makes more sense.
Yeah, can you just remind?
Because I know realistically we're going to have carryover.
Yeah, just very quickly, what are the procedures for expending the operations contingency? What approvals are required?
3 days notice. And you can't take more than 1/2 of the contingency at any one time. Is that right, Andrea?
Yeah, so I was just looking at the ordinance language right now. I do it so infrequently that I always just look at the ordinance before I need to do it. Yeah, 3 business days, and then discussed in the next monthly financial
To notify.
And then
Right. That's
yep, 1/2 from
to notify council 3 days ahead.
Yep. So you can move among subcategories.
So it's basically
from contingency.
Right. And so if you take anything from contingency, you always have to give council 3 days notice, and then you write it in as the report in the next council meeting. But at no time are you allowed to take any more than 1/2 at any time from the contingency. Right. I think that's the way it goes.
Yes.
Does that help? Okay.
But that
So
still leaves me with why wouldn't you leave the operations contingency? Because right now what you basically said is the maximum you can take out of it is $25,000. And you're going to reduce that to
I'm agreeing with you, Phil.
Excuse me?
No, I'm agreeing with you, Phil. Leave the contingency alone and take the 10,000 for additional salary expenditures of staff. Take that from the carryover, the estimated protected carryover. Reduce that to 60, but also reduce the revenue. And the only reason we can say this is because we know realistically we're going to have some carryover, more than 70,000. I'm almost 99.9% sure. And this is a good practice going forward, because I think we'll get more and more refined. And I do hope, as Ken probably hopes, that our budgets are going to become more targeted and realistic. But there's just been so much uncertainty, both on the revenue side as well as on the operating side because of the COVID. So, I hope things begin to normalize or stabilize in the out years, and the budgets will be adjusted for that.
So
I'm sorry, we're really taking too long on this, but go ahead, Andrea.
If the carryover, prior year carryover of line 1.0 is reduced to 60,000, and if 17.2 is then also reduced to 60,000. We would still need to reduce the operations contingency by 10,000 in order to fund an additional 10,000 for line 10.1.
Bet you're right about that.
Because it's a net, right, for 1.0 and 7.
Yeah, it's in that.
So we actually, yeah, it doesn't really get you much to reduce 1.0,
Help.
17.2, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess we haven't heard from, I think Mario expressed a positive about adding the contingency back into the staff salaries, but we haven't heard from all the council members on that concept.
Well, this is still, I'm fine with that. It's just the mechanism for how we're going to fund it. That's all.
I'm, since I'm not living with the budget and these decisions, I'm listening. If I heard something that substantially concerned me, I would chime in. I think you are positioned for progress at this point. To me, it's a tremendous amount of conversation about extremely little. And I think there's a lot more substance. So I would push forward.
Agreed. I just think that to some of our staff, that 10,000 might mean a lot.
Yes, what I meant is you could have said that and moved on.
Yeah, we're
So
saying, right, like we agree that 10,000 should be moved over. We have to decide tonight where it comes from, or is that something we can discuss as we move the budget forward? Because if we can delay, let's continue on, because it's 8 minutes to 9 and we haven't moved in anywhere in the last 45 minutes other than one point.
I think we could have it coming out of 17.1 for now. And then as we continue talking about the budget, if we need to adjust something as we're discussing, we can adjust it. And obviously this is the introduction. This is not the adoption. So we can.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense to me.
Yeah, and I think it's a great idea. And Jerry, I'm glad you did bring it up. I think it's a smart thing to do where we move it from. We can figure that out.
Okay, great. We'll make a note.
Okay, so moving on to 11.0, town administration. The one that probably jumps out at you is 11.2, general administration expenses. What I've done is for this year, there are sub items within this item, and some of those have stayed the same. And I've also, last year we budgeted for professional services, contracting out professional services. So for example, this is some of the assistance that that we get that we've had with the budget last year more than this year. But the person that we hired last year to do some analysis on the budget is actually helping with our COVID reimbursements right now. So this is this type of support. Also with the RFPs that we've had a backlog, helping get some of those RFPs out. This is the kind of stuff that this is being used for this fiscal year. So this would be continuing that. So wanted to point that out, that there's 35,000 budgeted for support services contract for professional services, along with other town office admin, contract office expenses. I think that's probably the main one. Probably worth discussing 11.7. Our expenses for IT, we've gotten to a point where we could reduce some of our capital expenses, but we need to increase on our operations side. So we've bought a lot of the hardware that we need to buy. Now we need the right kind of security and other software to be more of a professional operating environment. So some of this is the same as last year, and some of this, in talking with our IT contractor, there are some things that we need to look at and have further discussions about. And so in looking at kind of the menu of things that we need to improve over the next few years, this includes some room for some of those projects. So the type of Office 365 accounts that we have, that council that you have and that I have, we may need to be looking at not using the right IT word here, but a better way of a better account for those 365 accounts. And then this also includes costs that we already have baked in, like our website and our IT support services contract that was in FY21. So the same contract, but in FY22. But just wanted to point that out, that that's why there's a reduction on the capital side and an increase on the operation side for IT. Any town administration questions from council? Okay. Town committees, I think, is pretty straightforward. The 12.1 Arboretum Committee submits a memo every year, which is super helpful. So this includes some of their recommendations. This is verifying the tree inventory, and then wages for the town consulting arborist. Jerry Lee, anything you want to jump in on 12.2? Okay.
I think you summarized it well. Yeah.
Okay. And then 12.2 archives. This is the labor for Claire, for our contract archivist, as well as supplies and events. Archives committee also submits a memo, which is very helpful. So that's what some of this is based on. Some of the items that they recommend are more appropriately charged to other line items. So it's not a one-for-one, and the same thing can happen. Trying to think with Arboretum, if anything was allocated to other line items. I don't think there's so many different tree line items. I think it's among the tree line items.
Yeah, and then there's also the capital planning line item.
Right. 12.3 historic preservation. Stephen had mentioned this, that historic preservation asked for an increase to $1,000 because they want to do some educational initiatives. So that's what that's for. They have a plan there. And then 12.4, this is again the discussion from a couple years ago. So just continuing to have a small amount of money budgeted there for any ad hoc groups and sponsorships, and the asterisk still remains there that this would be, that these proposed expenses would require council approval. Any questions on town committees? Okay.
Andrea, this is it's about almost 9 o'clock. I'm wondering if we can just kind of highlight some of the maybe larger differences, perhaps, if that would satisfy council members instead of going line by line, just because of the time.
Sure.
Are you all right with that, council? You all right if we do it that way? We just sort of highlight the large differences, and then and if you want Andrea to circle back on something specific, we can do that. But I think for sake of time, instead of going line by line, we just look at the.
So either we're going to go through this line by line, and then this will be the meeting, or Andrew highlight and we go through it. Because I have to bounce off, and not it's shortly. It's just myself, just for the record. So I have to get back to work. So whatever you guys want to do, it's fine with me. But be mindful of the time.
Okay, the intent here is to make a motion to introduce this budget so that we, for approval, so that the next council meeting in May, it can be adopted.
Okay, so I recommend we focus
that you are not.
So Kaki, just because I am going to leave around 9:15, regardless if we're done with this meeting or not. So I recommend we just go through the budget, and you can table the rest of the agenda as far as I'm concerned.
So can I ask a question? I guess my confusion is that I feel like I had the chance to review this. I have had the chance to ask questions. I am comfortable not having it read to me. I feel like I've had my questions answered because there was so much information, and the details shared with the council. So I'm all for great budget process. I think it needs to be transparent. If there's questions from folks in town, I think that's incredibly important. And I would, I wouldn't try to rush that off. But I would make a motion. I just don't want to be, sort of disrespectful to anybody else who sees the process differently. But I don't feel compelled to, have read to us what has been shared with us already.
Okay. Quick feedback from Phil. What do you think, Phil? Mario, I know he's got to get off. It's 9 o'clock.
Would like just to finish up with whatever the major changes are, because I've got a question, for instance, trees, parks, and grounds 13.5. So if there are major changes like that, I would be interested in hearing those. Other than that, I'm fine.
Okay, and Jerry Lee, you okay with that if we hit the big differences? And
Yeah, I think
okay,
I'm good with that.
okay. Dan, we're just going to hit some of the big differences. I think we may also, on the capital side, just so you know, you can see, there hasn't been a lot of additions. We hit the big categories, like the town hall, for example, on planning, as well as the Arboretum got additional money that had been requested. We reduced the IT. I know I'm jumping ahead, Andrea, sorry. We put additional 22,000 into the town hall for renovation planned purposes. And for Penn Place, we put the 23,000 for additional work that needs to be done on the sort of infrastructure around Penn Place, but also for a potential consultant for interior, for an interior look of the space. So there isn't a lot to discuss on the capital unless you really think we got to make major movement of money on the capital budget. But if we need to get there, we can, but let's just look at the major differences on the operating budget. Okay, Andrea?
This will be fast. In
Okay.
13.5, there is additional funding in here because we're just going to have to, it's going to take a while to claw out to get caught up on pruning and removals. Removals, and this would be plantings for trees. Pruning would be on a.
Okay.
On the operations side, this is pruning and unscheduled work. And one thing that's in here is that Strathmore, doing just half of Strathmore is 15 grand. So this is what Arboretum Committee recommended. This is with Phil Normandy's input. So that's why this number is what it is. The other line item that I would point your attention to is just line 15.0, and just pointing out that our final payment for our Penn Place debt is in May of 2022. That would be a major thing. Yeah, big deal.
That is the bond. That was the bond. Go ahead, Andrea.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah.
That was the
bond. Yeah.
That was the bond to renovate Penn Place. And so that would be the last payment, as Andrea describes, in May. And then that item goes away. That's nice.
That's a good thing. I think that's sort of the biggest things that were remaining there for operations. Phil, does that answer your question on what you were thinking for 13.5?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yep, you bet. And then Kaki, I think you reviewed the highlights really for capital. There wasn't that many changes being proposed. So I would
except we were keeping with the priorities of, right.
Yep.
For town hall in place,
Yep.
right.
So I would just open it up to questions from council if there's anything related to the tree work or
And a motion if we need to.
Mhm.
Or if we want to go with a motion. Sorry, Andrea.
No,
I know Mario's hanging on by the skin of his teeth.
I'm fine, Kaki. I guess I have line 15 is I have to get back. Totally fine. Don't stop.
So Kaki, a motion to
Well-
accept the ordinance number 2021-4 for the FY 2022 capital and operating budget.
With the discussed
With the changes as
Changes.
discussed.
I think that's sufficient. Okay, that's the motion raised by Council Member Dan Simons. Anybody seconding? Do I hear a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
This is for introduction of the budget, folks.
Yes. I'm
Okay,
seconding
Mario,
it.
thank you. Okay, is there anybody not in favor of this budget being passed for introduction? Okay, is everybody in favor? Say yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Okay, nobody abstaining? Okay, unanimous vote to pass the introduction. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Andrea, so much for doing this work. Appreciate it very much. Okay, I'm sorry, let's go to my agenda.
Next item's tax duplication, Khaki.
Oh, why don't you take it? Take it,
Sure.
Andrea.
So the purpose of this resolution is to demand our fair share of taxes from the county. So as background, there are a group of Montgomery County municipalities that have been working on this for many years. It's particularly important for the folks that have police, but it's important to Garrett Parkers too. So residents pay certain taxes to the county for services that are provided by the town. And for us in this first round of advocacy with the county, would be asking for transportation. It amounts to about $7,800 a year of additional revenue. And this is related to road maintenance. So if this resolution is adopted by council, just to give you an idea of next steps, we would send a letter to the county executive and the county council with this resolution attached, along with what some other towns in Montgomery County and cities in Montgomery County are doing. So this is to basically ask for our share of revenue since we're providing the services that they're taxing our residents for. Are there any questions about this or? Okay. So I would be looking for, I
Is there a
guess,
motion?
yeah, somebody
And
said,
Andrea, I just wanted to ask you to make a technical correction. I don't have any questions, and I think this is a good idea. But I think in the last whereas, there's a typo. That should be the American Rescue Plan Act rather than Recovery Plan Act. Other than that, I think it looks great.
okay, in the
The
last,
last whereas,
yep. I'll look that up. Okay.
other than that, I'd be happy to motion to pass the resolution with that correction.
Okay.
I'm happy to second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Yes?
Aye.
Okay, anybody nay? Anybody abstaining? Okay, so passed. Thank you, everybody. Okay, let's see, we are on to, got my
Updates.
updates. There it is. We have no new business, as far as I know, so Dan or Phil, do you want to give any update on the train horn?
Sure, I can give a quick. So thanks to the Citizens Association for hosting a discussion and a presentation from the consultant that the town had engaged. I thought it was a good and efficient discussion and sharing of the information. The information from the consultant is also posted on our Garrett Park website for anyone who may have missed that, so folks can go in and review. I haven't yet seen the results of the survey that was distributed after the meeting. So I think the next steps here will be for the council to see the survey results where folks in town were asked, a variety of questions so that the council would have some, at least I would say, a direction to understand what kind of enthusiasm there is for what sort of train horn or sound mitigation efforts. I've received a few emails on the side where folks have suggested other ideas to, for example, sound barriers, additional landscaping, some safety topics. Some folks had noted that there is already a bell that does, make noise to warn of oncoming trains because that topic had come up. So overall, I think that the topic is moving forward. We have a definitive, professionally written document with options. I'll defer to Phil for more to add. My hope here, because Phil carries a lot of water, is that as Donna steps on as a new council member, that she'd be able to collaborate with Phil and gather this information from townsfolk and tee this up to find out what direction the town wants to go.
Okay. Okay. So I can give you the preliminary results now, and then I will have something by the end of the week. But generally speaking, so we ran the survey between March 24th and March 31st using SurveyMonkey, and it had 10 questions, including one which was a free answer, basically a comment question. But I think I could summarize it relatively quickly by saying that in looking at the first two questions, what we've got back for responses are, when asked on a scale from 1 to 10, how much does the train horn bother you? From 1, not at all, to 10, extremely annoying. 51% of the people said not at all or 2, versus only 15% saying 9 or extremely annoying.
Wow.
And looking at the second question was, and by the way, just to give you, that was a mandatory question. You had to answer it. So we had 144 responses. I had to discount 2 of them because they were not in Garrett Park. Nevertheless, the numbers are still basically the same. Then I went to question 2, and question 2 was skipped by 2 people, but we had 142 responses. And it said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much effort would you like to see the council and mayor put into train horn reduction plan? From 1, not at all, to 10, make it a top priority. And it basically came down to, we have 39% of the people chose either not at all or 2. 16% of the people chose 9 or make it a top priority. And interestingly enough, 13% chose some priority. The other question, and so then I've got some more we can go forward with, but basically looking at the third question, during outdoor activities, how much does the train horn affect you? And we had basically 49% of the people said hardly notice it or hear it but don't care. Only essentially 18% said playing most of the time were extremely annoying. And that's kind of what will be seen in the rest of the results, which I'll publish to the council here by the end of the week.
Yeah, everyone who lives on Rokeby is annoyed and the rest of the town doesn't give a crap. So that's pretty much it. So.
Well, interestingly enough, I'll just quick jump to that one for a moment. So I have in here basically my house, where do you live? To better gauge how train horn sound carries an impact it has on you, please select the single best description of the geographic area in which you live. And 33% of the people said my house is where the house across the street abuts the tracks. And 34% said my house is on the north side of Strathmore, but not included in the above. So basically 70% of the people were on the north side of Strathmore. But again, I'll publish the whole thing, but that's where we're at on that.
Okay. Whoops. Thank you, Phil. Are you going to post those for us? Send that out? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Are you going to be able to post that?
By the end of the week,
Okay.
yes, because the whole thing was anonymous, so that there's the only thing that people will see is some comments that people made, but there doesn't appear to be any personally identifiable information. And obviously, those who wrote the comments know exactly what they wrote, but there's nothing where we could pin it to one person or something. I think it should be okay to publish.
All right,
So,
thank you.
Jackie, I would just
Because
add-
of, okay, I just wanted to get to Mario before he gets off and jump down to archives, but Dan, go ahead, I'm sorry.
no, that's all right. Go ahead, Mario.
Something else.
No, that's okay.
You
Dan.
sure?
Yeah,
Are you on the
no,
topic of the horn?
yeah, good.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's good process. You know, my hope is that Phil will publish those results and then the information is there, right? And I think that if there are other folks in town that then want to sort of champion this topic or give guidance to the council to deploy money or take actions, you know, some folks in town could take their own steps, right? A petition, more clarity rather than just a survey, et cetera. But, you know, my take is that the council has done its work here to lay out the legalities and the information and put the information there. And so I'm appreciative of the efforts for everybody to get it to that point.
I agree. I think.
And I thank you for leading it, Dan, and for Phil, really. We'll see where we go. Okay. Mario,
Thank you.
for time wise, would you like to give us an update on the archives, and then you don't have to stay on after that.
Thanks, Kaki. Yeah, so Clyde McDonald sent me some notes, some great notes. Obviously, we all know the great work that she does in support of the town archive. And so a couple of things she's working on, and forgive me, I have my notes here on a different screen, so I'm just gonna read them off to you guys. So I think I mentioned last time, his big major project continues on managing all the town records. I think she said she went through 23 boxes of records so far that were pulled down from the attic that I mentioned last time. So she's working with the town office and staff to go through these records and and work it out and discern. And some of the stuff is going to be saved, other stuff is being archived, other stuff she's trying to determine. It's a big project. I'm sure it's going to go on for multiple months. I think I mentioned last time is ongoing indexing of and working on an oral history and an oral collection, which is great. And then she's working with the archive committee to develop a collection development policy and disaster planning procedures for the archives, because goodness gracious, nothing should ever happen to that stuff, because that'd be bad. So that's a really important project she's going on. And finally,
Irreplaceable.
yeah, absolutely. And then finally, she's working on several requests, looking for photographs of some of the old homes and histories, and some old photographs of town hall and some of the work that was done over the years in town hall. So as always, these projects are time consuming and detail oriented. And I tip my cap to Claire every time I read her notes that she sends to me and previously to Phil. So that's what's going on there.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Yeah, she does. We get our money's worth from Claire. There's no question about that.
No question.
Thank you, Mario. Okay, let's go back. Jerry Lee, I'm going to jump over to Phil for stormwater, because I know there's somebody on the call who might be wanting to hear about this. Whoops, just lost my earbud. Go ahead, Phil, about the stormwater, okay?
So basically where we are is that the surveyors are going out doing a topographic survey to use as input into the stormwater plans is what we would propose doing. This is, as I had mentioned previously in the previous meeting, we've broken this into three parts: the survey, the dealing with the stormwater and the rerouting and the work being done where the water currently runs. And then the third part is the path that crosses over the creek or stormwater outflow before it heads down to the railroad tracks. So we're at stage one right now, which is the survey. And as of a couple of days ago, we hadn't heard back from Jason Lazar, our civil engineers, to whether or not he got the information back from the surveyors. So that's what I know so far.
Okay, are you going to follow up, or is Andrea going to follow up?
This is Andrea. I can follow up.
I'm not sure if Andrea's. Oh, thanks, Andrea. Okay. All right. I know there's a resident on there. I don't know if it's Neelam. Did you want to ask a question about it? And she's on mute. GIRIN.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
So I
Go
just
ahead.
want to know when someone will start working on it. And I would like to know, like, just give me a time frame, because my backyard is eroding day by day. It's just going down very rapidly. And I don't know whether I need to take any action and start putting in stones there, or will the town give me some timeline as to when the work would be started?
I can.
Phil, would you like to take a crack at that, and then Andrea, go ahead and join in? Phil, do you have an idea?
I would think it would be by the time we get done getting a survey, going through, looking at the plans, agreeing with the plans, doing the RFP, it could be a couple of months. I mean, Andrea, do you see something different?
No, I was just going to say specifically, the process survey should be done 2 weeks after the field work is complete, which should be next. So there should be next week that the process survey should be complete at least. But I think in terms of big picture, I think that's probably right, Phil.
So I would expect
you think that we
sometime,
might actually
2 to 3 months from now, that work would be started.
I think if the survey is done, if the survey is processed by next week, then Phil, if you think the RFP could be out on the street, say in another, what, maybe 3 weeks after that, the RFP probably has to be posted for 30 days.
No. Well, we can talk about that offline. It depends on the estimate. Can I ask a quick
estimate? Yes.
Yeah, I have a quick question on this. You're talking about the RFP just for the mitigation of erosion. You're not talking about the bike path area, right?
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
Just want to make sure of that. Okay, good. Yeah, okay. I don't think you'll need 30 days.
Yeah, you're right. It will depend on the estimated cost of the project on the timeline. It will impact our procurement procedures that have to be followed.
Yeah. Is that okay? Okay, Neelam, we gave you some kind of an answer.
Okay.
Okay, if we move on.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
We will keep you in the loop.
Okay.
And I don't think you should do anything yet. Okay.
I will not work in the backyard.
Okay. Okay. Jerry Lee, can you talk about the Porcupine Woods? And
Yeah.
I have a follow-up question for you after that, okay?
Right. The committee has worked with the town manager to identify a vendor to complete the work in Porcupine Woods for the restoration work. And they've been working with Andrea to finalize the contract award documents. So I think by the next meeting that should be awarded and the work may even be underway. In addition to the planting work, it will also include rebuilding the stairs that allow people on the path to enter Porcupine Woods from Claremont. So that should be a really nice improvement. The other quick things I wanted to mention, spring planting is proceeding and purchases are already underway. And also tree tagging for, I think it's like 32 new trees have been added to our database. So those are getting tagged. So if you see people working on that, that's what that is. And also the committee is working on some in-house, so to speak, in-house within the committee, GIS solutions that might be more flexible and potentially even cost savings for the town. So we'll see where that goes.
And that's for mapping trees in town, the GIS?
Right now we have a database and you can look at that on an online map on the town's website. But in terms of maintaining that in the future, we think this might be a more flexible alternative.
Okay, I just wanted to have that clear on the record, oral record.
Right, yeah. And when I say, I mean the more technically minded members of the committee.
No problem. All right, listen, I have a quick question about the Arboretum Committee membership. Could you remind me of when we extended Kathy Benjamin's term by 6 months? Do you remember when it's expired? And I think we had already a placeholder. We had somebody else ready to also come in when she steps off. Do you know when her term expires?
Yeah,
It's
I
coming
wouldn't
up,
want
I
to be
think.
off the,
That's what
I
I'm
wouldn't want to be
asking.
off the cuff on that. I think it was perhaps the end of May or something like
Okay.
that, but we can certainly check the minutes. And yes, I do believe that
Okay.
when you solicited last time, you got multiple volunteers, and so you had a second volunteer in mind to take that position once it opened up again.
Okay. All right, Andrea, I thank you, everybody. I think we're able to go on to the town manager's report.
Okay. Really nothing major happening here. The March revenues, operations, capital budgets are at expected levels. Total revenues and expenses are within projections. There were 3 new permits issued. Those are in the report. I'm trying to look through here real quick if there's anything that hasn't been mentioned that needs to be. For those who are interested in this sort of thing, the FY20 audit is now on the town website. Our RFPs, we're still getting them out there. We will have the tree contractor and trash services will be the next 2 that will be posted. And that is about it. The rest is just sort of town office and town maintenance staff happenings. Any questions?
Andrea, did
Yes,
you?
Andrea, we have the Citizens of, I'm sorry, we have the Citizens Association agreeing to do the town phone directory.
Yes, they said they would help support with
Yeah.
the creation of that, and that they're creating a poll to distribute to residents. So I guess keep an eye out for
Okay.
that.
Keep an eye out for the email. Okay, wonderful. Jerry Lee, you were gonna say something as well.
Did I hear correctly that you said the RFP was already out for the trash collection?
Not yet, no.
Soon.
So
Okay.
tree services will be up first, probably this week. I was hoping for last week, so probably in the next couple days. And then trash services will follow behind that, but attorney needs to look at that one still. So that one might be a couple of weeks away.
Thank you.
Yep.
And then following that, we should have the one for the erosion mitigation.
Yes, that could be, that could
Right?
be out there too. Yep.
Number 3. Okay.
And that one
all right.
delayed by the other 2. If any, it shouldn't necessarily be delayed by the other 2, since our town engineer tends to be the one helping with those RFPs. It's not as much of a lift on, from town office. So.
Question: the trash includes the recycling. The trash includes the recycling, and will that be the 2 stream again also?
I think the idea would be to keep it as how we have it now, but we may need to have the respondents give options on what they are willing to do and give different costs, estimated costs for those options.
Okay.
Sorry.
Because I know it's important to a number of people about versus single stream recycling, just because of the amount of trash that can be inadvertently made with single stream. But I will await what happens.
Sure.
Okay, if there's no other discussion, I'd like to say thank you again to Dan. This is his last town council meeting with all of us. So we wish you good luck in the future with your endeavors. And thank you again for all the service.
Thank
And
you.
you will
My
be
pleasure.
missed. Okay.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Dan.
Meeting is
Freedom,
adjourned.
Dan.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Good night. Meeting is adjourned. And
Good night.
it is 9:29.
Got it.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.